When I turned down his offer to buy my house, my neighbor dumped old tires on my lawn, filed anonymously with the city, and had me fined $1,800. Guess you can't maintain a property after all, he snorted. But I installed a trail cam, got him on video, and sent it to his employer along with. It all started with a knock at my door that should have just been another neighborly conversation, but turned out to be a declaration of war. "Hey, Josh," my neighbor, Brent, said with a tight smile. He stood on my front porch with a manila folder under one arm. "I've got a proposal for you." Brent had only moved into the cul-de-sac a year ago, right next door to me in my quiet corner of Puyallup, Washington. I'd lived here for over 2 decades, raised my daughter here, watched the backyard trees grow from saplings. My late wife planted the hydrangeas out front. He flipped open the folder, showed me some paperwork, and said, "I'll give you $340,000 cash for the house. No repairs needed. We close in 3 weeks." I blinked. "You trying to buy me out?" Brent chuckled like I was missing the point. "Not buy you out, man. Give you freedom. This neighborhood's getting old. I got big plans, just bought the 2 houses across the street. You be doing yourself a favor." I handed his papers back. "I'm not selling. This is my home." Brent's smile didn't move. "Think it over." But I didn't need to. I was staying put. That's when the trouble started. 3 days later, I came home from work and found 5 cracked, weather-beaten tires sitting right in the middle of my front lawn. At first, I thought maybe some kid had dumped them. So I hauled them to the side, called the city, and scheduled a bulk pickup. But before the city came, a code enforcement officer showed up at my door. "You've been reported for illegal outdoor storage," she said, pointing to the tires. "That's a $600 fine." I stood there stunned. "I didn't dump them here. Someone else. We get that a lot," she cut in. "You'll need to appeal in writing." The next week, 2 more tires appeared. Then 3. Every couple days, new junk would show up. Broken crates, rusted metal parts, even a shattered toilet once. Every time I moved it, a new complaint came in. And every time, I got hit with another fine. $300 here, $500 there. I was up to $1,800 in fines before I knew it. Brent would smirk whenever he saw me out front. "Guess you can't maintain a property after all," he said one morning while sipping coffee on his porch. I knew it was him. I knew it. So I fought back the only way I could. Quietly. I drove to Cabela's and bought a trail cam. High resolution, night vision, motion activated. I mounted it deep in the rhododendrons near my mailbox. The angle was perfect. It caught the whole front yard and the street. I didn't tell a soul. And sure enough, on a Tuesday at 2:13 a.m., the camera caught Brent backing his truck halfway up my driveway. He dropped 2 tires right onto the lawn, then jogged back like it was a game. The next night, he came back with a stack of old paint cans. Wore gloves and a hoodie. Thought he was slick, but I had it all. Time-stamped, clear as day. That weekend, I mailed a USB drive to his employer, a commercial real estate firm in Tacoma. Not anonymously either. I included a typed letter. "Dear Mr. Hess, this footage shows your employee, Brent Hargrove, committing multiple acts of illegal dumping and harassment, leading to $1,800 in civil fines on my property. I trust your company values integrity and expects better behavior from its representatives, especially those involved in residential acquisitions. Regards, Joshua M. Klein." And I didn't stop there. I also sent a second copy to the City Code Enforcement Office, along with a detailed timeline and printed screenshots. I requested a formal appeal of every fine I'd received. But the real satisfaction came that Thursday morning. I was raking leaves when a white Lexus pulled into Brent's driveway. A man in a gray suit stepped out, holding a folder. They talked in the driveway. Heated voices. Brent's face went red. He started pacing, pointing toward my house, arms flailing. Then the man handed him the folder. Termination papers. Brent screamed, slammed his hand on the hood of the Lexus. But the man was already walking back to the car. I didn't say a word. I just waved. "Now let me ask you this. What would you have done if your neighbor tried to sabotage your life just to force you out?" Drop your answer in the comments. And if you're loving these real revenge stories, hit like and subscribe for the next chapter, because this one's just getting started. For a few weeks, things were quiet. Too quiet. Brent stopped making eye contact. The tires stopped showing up. His smug grin was gone. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. I figured that was the end of it, until a letter arrived. It was slid under my front door. No envelope, no postage, just a single typed sheet of paper. You think this is over? You just made the biggest mistake of your life. You cost me my job, my reputation. I'm not done with you. B. I stood there holding the paper, heart pounding. It wasn't just a threat, it was a promise. And sure enough, the next week, weird things started happening. First, my mail started going missing. No bills, no magazines, nothing for 4 straight days. When I finally asked my mail carrier, she told me someone filed a temporary mail hold in my name, online. Then my power went out. Twice. I called the electric company. They said someone had reported a fire hazard on my panel and requested a service shutdown for urgent safety repairs. They verified my identity over the phone, but whoever called had enough of my info to get past the first few questions. I had to spend 3 hours on the phone getting everything locked down: mail, utilities, my bank account. I installed a camera at the back gate too. Changed the locks. Upgraded the passwords. Everything. Brent was coming unhinged. He couldn't dump tires anymore. So now he was trying to wreck my life from behind a keyboard. But the real twist? I wasn't the only one he'd been messing with. See, while I was talking to my mail carrier one afternoon, she leaned in and said, "You know, Mr. Klein, you're not the first house he's targeted." That stopped me cold. She went on to explain that 2 other homes on our street, both older couples, had gotten sudden, unexplained code violations this past spring. Same MO junk appeared. Fines followed. Brent had offered to help them sell before things got worse. Both homes sold under value. Fast. Cash deals. I knew right then Brent had a pattern, and he wasn't working alone. So I started digging. I drove downtown and pulled the public property records. Both homes had sold to an LLC named Moss Bay Properties. I looked it up. Registered 3 years ago in Kirkland. Owner? A man named Jared Reese. Quick LinkedIn search. Guess who Jared's best friend was? Brent Hargrove. They went to college together. Jared was the investor. Brent was the closer. Their little scam? Harass older homeowners, get them slapped with violations and stress, then swoop in with an all-cash offer. Ugly, but legal, unless you could prove the harassment. Which I could. I wasn't just going to ruin Brent. I was going to burn their entire operation to the ground. I met with Detective Carling Nguyen at the Puyallup Police Department. I brought the videos, the notes, the fake mail hold forms, even the printouts from the property records. She took one look at it and said, "You've got something real here." It turns out, mail fraud and identity interference aren't just code violations. They're federal charges. Nguyen looped in the Postal Inspection Service, who started investigating the mail tampering. Meanwhile, she reached out to the 2 elderly couples who'd sold their homes under pressure. Both were willing to talk. Both described Brent showing up right after their violations. One couple even had a voicemail from him saved on an old landline. We were building a case. But Brent must have sensed the walls closing in because one night, just before midnight, someone broke into my backyard. The motion lights snapped on. The cameras caught a figure in a hoodie climbing over my fence, heading straight toward the back window. But I'd already installed smart floodlights with a loudspeaker. As soon as the camera caught motion, the system blasted a 120 decibel alarm and announced, "You are being recorded." Authorities have been notified. The guy bolted. Police arrived in under 5 minutes. Didn't catch him, but the footage was clear. Same build, same shoes. It was Brent. Gwen didn't even wait for a warrant that time. She showed up the next morning with a patrol unit, and Brent was cuffed right there in his driveway. But here's the twist. He didn't go quietly. While they were taking him in, he shouted across the lawn, "You're going to regret this, Klein. You have no idea who you're messing with." And he was right. I didn't know everything yet, but I was about to find out. Brent sat in county lockup for 48 hours before his lawyer bailed him out. But he wasn't smiling anymore. He looked tired, jumpy, pale. I figured that would be the end. Charges were filed: trespassing, mail fraud, attempted burglary. The whole neighborhood was talking. People who used to nod politely now crossed the street when he walked by. But something still didn't sit right with me. Brent wasn't smart enough to build a scam this layered on his own. And it didn't make sense for a guy who'd just been fired, arrested, and humiliated to keep pushing, unless someone else was pulling the strings. So I went digging again. And that's when I uncovered something that made my blood run cold. Remember that LLC? Moss Bay Properties? The one that bought the 2 other houses on my street? I'd looked at the property records before, but I hadn't checked the funding trail. I paid a title researcher online to dig deeper. And guess who had financed both of those fast cash purchases? Not Jared Reese. Not Brent Hargrove. My own bank. Specifically, a senior loan officer named Dylan Schaefer, who just happened to be married to Brent's cousin. I checked my mortgage paperwork. Dylan's name was right there on the refinance I did 2 years ago after my wife passed. He knew exactly how much equity I had, what my financial limits were, and how tight things have been since I went on disability last year. This whole thing, it was orchestrated from the inside. Dylan fed Brent the info. Brent did the dirty work. Jared cleaned up the profit. And I wasn't just another neighbor to pressure. I was the test case. They figured I'd fold under pressure. Sell cheap. Let them flip the house. Then they'd do it again. And again. Only I didn't fold. I did the one thing they didn't plan for. I fought back. With the new information, I called Detective Nguyen again. She put me in touch with Special Agent Lucas Romero at the FDIC's Financial Crimes Unit. Romero wasn't just interested. He was furious. This kind of internal abuse is exactly what we prosecute, he said. He launched a formal inquiry, subpoenaed loan files, dug into email logs. Within weeks, he had evidence that Dylan had violated lending laws, sharing private client data with outside parties for personal gain. But it got even worse. Turns out, Jared Reese had flipped 6 properties in Pierce County over the last year, all undervalued, all cash buys, all traced back to neighborhoods with a trail of code violations and anonymous complaints. Same MO, same pattern. Brent was just one of 3 field agents. Romero called it a targeted property harassment ring. And with the new evidence, the case went federal. One morning, I got a call from Agent Romero. "We got him," he said. "They raided Jared's office. Confiscated laptops, phones, files. Brent's devices, too. Text messages showed everything. Who they targeted, what was shared, even how much they paid Brent per successful deal. And Dylan? Fired. Disbarred from lending. Under investigation for fraud. He's looking at 10 years if convicted. As for Brent, he took a plea deal. He flipped on Jared, turned over everything. In exchange, he got house arrest and a massive fine, including paying back every dollar in fines I received, plus damages for harassment. I got a check for $12,600. More importantly, the city wiped every single violation from my record, publicly, posted a formal apology on their site. And now, there's a local ordinance under review that will prevent anonymous code reports without proof. Because of my case. Because I didn't give in. But here's the real kicker. Last week, I got a letter from an elderly man across town. He'd read about my case in the paper. Said the same thing had happened to him, only he had sold his house out of fear. He thanked me for exposing them, and told me something I didn't expect. "My wife and I watch your street when we drive by. Your house. It always looked like someone was still fighting. Like it mattered. That gave us hope. Sometimes revenge isn't about getting even. Sometimes it's about being the one who says, 'Not here. Not today.'" After the arrests, the fines being cleared, and the check in my hand, most people would have called it a win. But I couldn't let it go just yet, because something still bothered me. How many people had already been hurt before me? How many had already sold their homes in fear, never knowing what really happened? The newspaper only ran a short piece. Local column, buried under city updates and a high school football roundup. And none of it mentioned the full story, how Brent, Dylan, and Jared had worked together to systematically push vulnerable homeowners out for profit. I didn't want their names to just vanish in a plea deal. I wanted people to know what they had done and how easy it was for a scheme like this to happen anywhere. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I went public. It started small. I wrote a long post on Nextdoor explaining everything, step by step. I didn't just vent. I laid it out with evidence. Screenshots of the camera footage, the redacted letter from the bank, public records showing the pattern of property transfers, the apology from the city, even the diagram of how Moss Bay Properties was structured. The post exploded. Hundreds of comments. Dozens of DMs. People from all over Puyallup, and even neighboring cities like Auburn and Sumner, started chiming in with similar stories. One woman said she thought she was just paranoid when old junk showed up on her lawn. Another said she filed 3 appeals against fines she just couldn't explain. Some had already sold. Others were still hanging on. They weren't paranoid. They were being hunted. That post ended up getting picked up by King 5 News. Then Seattle Times ran a feature. Retiree exposes real estate harassment ring that targeted seniors across Pierce County. Suddenly, the story was everywhere. And guess who had to face it? Jared Reese. He tried to lay low after the raid, scrubbed his website, took down social media, but it was too late. By the time the Times article ran, his investors pulled out. His lawyer dropped him. The IRS opened a case for unreported income from cash house flips. Brent? The HOA forced a vote on whether to let him stay in the neighborhood while under house arrest. 73% voted to remove him. He was forced to sell his home and move out. The irony? The very scam he ran to push me out of my home? It got him booted from his. But that's not where the story ends. Because a few weeks after the article went national, I got a call from a man named Eli Braverman. He runs a nonprofit in Tacoma that helps older homeowners navigate property tax assistance and defend against shady real estate tactics. I read what you did, he said. You took them down. We'd like your help. Maybe even speak at one of our events. I didn't know what to say. I was just a retired machinist. Not a speaker. Not a crusader. But I went, told my story, showed the footage, warned them what signs to watch for. And at the end of the talk, a woman came up to me crying. They did the same thing to my brother in Spokane, she said. Only we thought it was just bad luck. But now I know. Now, I go by Mr. Klein at those events. I've spoken in Wenatchee, Olympia, Bellingham, and next month I'm headed to Boise. My house. Still mine. Front lawn? Clean. Mailbox? Locked. Security system? Upgraded. I even turned that $12,600 settlement check into something more. I created a free online guide for homeowners. How to spot and stop real estate harassment. People all over Washington are using it. I've helped 5 families keep their homes already. The best revenge? Making sure the scam doesn't work anymore. So next time someone knocks on your door with a cash offer and a fake smile, don't just slam the door. Turn on your camera. Start asking questions. And remember, the quiet guy down the street who rakes his leaves? He might just be the one who burns your whole scam to the ground.